Hey, can I have everyone's attention just for a few minutes? I know you guys are working. I'll be fast. I just want to give a couple updates. So we have the final exam on May 5th. Is that right? Seems right. Seems like, yeah, that seems kind of far from now, but okay. So May 5th from 9 to 11 is the final exam. But yet the last day of class is today.
Yeah, I don't know why I think a week later, because usually it's the last week in April, not the first week in May. So I don't know why I did that.
So we have a big gap between today, which is the last class, and the final exam, which is May 5th. The Lab 5 is technically due today. We can accept late submissions, though, if you need more time. And if you want to demo after today, that's okay, too, as long as you can get an appointment with one of us to come down. I mean, you can ask Alex and Swash and me. One of us, I'm sure, will be able to make it down here at a pre-planned time to do the demo. Okay, but late penalties will apply starting from today for Lab 5. Okay, the final exam is. I had several questions about the final, so it's comprehensive, and I've got all the topics listed here. Make sure that you brush up on UART, SPI, I2C, and JTAG. Make sure you know how to read, the timing diagrams and answer questions about those protocols. Programmed I/O, bit manipulation. That's things like I/O address ranges and control and status registers and that sort of stuff. Interrupts and PWM, pulse width modulation. Then we have 2 lectures that I gave after the midterm. One was on control theory. The other one was on real-time systems. We had 1 quiz on each of these. I already went over the quiz for control theory. I'll go over the quiz for the real-time systems today. Control theory, make sure that you're good with the Laplace transform, transfer functions, closed loop versus open loop control, eigenfunction calculation, that's the inverse, that's the weird inverse Laplace transform for transfer functions. Bounded input, bounded output stability. We talked about 3 different ways to determine if a transfer function was stable. Then PID control, which I think most of you remember from robotics. But make sure that you understand that the PID controller can be representative as in a S domain or Z domain transfer function. Controller performance. I mentioned this briefly, but basically when it comes to controllers, you want it to be stable, but you also want it to have a good rise time and a low overshoot, meaning how quickly you approach the set point and whether or not you go past the set point, before you reconverge, and this overshoot causes oscillation around the set point. Z domain to S domain to Z domain. We talked about 2 ways to do that. The first way is to just substitute the integrals and derivatives with their Z domain equivalents. Z domain has first difference as opposed to derivative. But the other way to do it is through a Tustin transform, where you substitute Z for the Tustin. There's an expression that you substitute it. You substitute S for an expression to do a Tustin transform, and the Tustin transform incorporates the time step in there as well. And then Z-domain transfer function implementation. This is the thing where if you have a transfer function and you want to actually implement it in software, you can do it, but you have to take the transfer function out of its normal form and make it a function of the next output as a function of the previous inputs and outputs, right? You guys remember that? So most of this stuff just involves, doing a little bit of math, algebra, right? And then real-time systems, we talked about worst-case execution time calculation from a statistical perspective, where you never really know the worst-case execution time for sure, but you can estimate it within a given confidence interval, assuming the example I gave in class was for a normally distributed execution time. Not all execution times are normally distributed, and so this is kind of the simplest case of this. So when I say normally, I mean, Gaussian distribution. Non-preemptive, preemptive, and periodic scheduling, just what that is. Non-preemptive, of course, is where a task has to run to completion before you can schedule another task, whereas preemptive means that the scheduler can put a running task to sleep when a task with higher priority becomes ready to run. Does it make sense? So that's preemptive. And then periodic scheduling is just where the deadline and the period are the same thing. Then we talked about measuring utilization, and also earliest deadline first and rate monotonic scheduling and their corresponding schedulability tests. And we did that for both uniprocessor and multiprocessor. Okay, so make sure that those are all the topics that'll be covered. Exam will be just 2 hours, and it'll look a lot like the midterm. Okay, so really quick, I wanted to go over the last quiz. This one said assume 4 tasks with execution time period values of the following. What's the utilization? Make sure for this you just add up the ratio of each execution time with its corresponding period, right? What's the RMS bound? This is the RMS bound. There might be other RMS bounds that exist in the literature. The one I gave you in class, though, is the version where you take the utilization of each task and you add 1, and then you multiply them together, and you're looking for that to be less than or equal to 2. In this case, it's greater than 2, so this would not be guaranteed to schedule with RMS scheduling. This one gives you another set of tasks. Are they schedulable with RMS? This one, again, is greater than 2 when you calculate the schedulability bound. This says cannot be scheduled with RMS. Technically, it might be, but it can't be guaranteed. It's not guaranteed to be. You're not guaranteed to meet the deadlines with RMS. So I need to change that wording there. And also, sorry, never mind. That was correct, actually. So I forgot the slide was animated. So it violates the schedulability test, but also, in addition to that, because if it had just violated this test, it may or may not have been schedulable. But actually, we know it cannot be schedulable because the utilization is 117.5% when you calculate the utilization. So in this case, I did a combination of the RMS schedulability test, right, and checking the utilization. The utilization says that there's just no way. Not with one processor, there's no possible way because it would require more than one processor, right? This requires 1.175 processors. Okay, assume 4 tasks with the following execution time and period. Are they schedulable using partitioned RMS scheduling? Partition scheduling is where you basically decide ahead of time which tasks go to which processor. So you create a static mapping between processors and tasks. The problem is there's a whole lot of ways to do that. So for example, if I have 4 tasks and 2 processors, I could, for instance, put all 4 on processor 1 and none on processor 2, or I could put 1 on processor 1 and 3 on processor 2, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways to do that, right? So I can pick any of 4 tasks to put on one processor and the other 3 to put on the other, and then I could put 2 on one and 2 on the other, and there's 3 ways to do that. So anyway, I did an exhaustive search here in this table. I looked at every possible way to assign tasks to processors, and then once I did that, I did the RMS bound for whatever tasks were on each processor. So I looked at every way to assign tasks to processors, and for each of those, I calculated the RMS bound for both processors. And it turns out that there was only one solution to this, in which I put task 1 and 4 on processor 1 and task 2 and 3 on processor 2. And it just so happens in both of those cases, I barely squeak by meeting the bound on both. If you do any other assignment, it won't work. Okay, so that's partition scheduling, right? Now, what about this one says, under which algorithms are these 3 tasks schedulable? Utilization is 99%, so it does work on EDF, but RMS, unclear, right? Because RMS, it violates the bound, so it's not clear if this will work on RMS, if this will. And by the way, when I say work, I mean whether it'll be guaranteed to meet deadlines, whether every task will complete before its deadline, or by its deadline. Okay, got another 4 tasks. What's the largest value of n that would make the task schedulable? So this is basically just saying solve for n, one of the tasks has an unknown execution time. But in this case, it's first fit monotonic scheduling on 2 processors. And if you remember, the way that works is basically this one is a utilization bound. So you calculate the utilization and you check to see if it's under the utilization bound, which is basically 0.41 times the number of processors, right? So there's 2 processors, so the utilization has to be less than or equal to 0.82, right? And so you just solve for n, and n ends 5.1. And then finally, this one says you got 4 tasks, so they schedule with EDF on 2. And this one is the one where you calculate the utilization. And so this one is fine. Utilization is less than 2, so it looks like it might work. But then you have to find the greatest common divisor of each of the periods. And then you take that greatest common divisor and you multiply it by the individual utilizations. I have no idea how they derive this. Seems like a very strange test. But that's the test you do, right? You calculate the GCD of the periods and you just multiply it by the utilization of each processor. And as long as that is an integer, each of those is an integer, it's fine, but one of them is not. Actually, 3 of them are not, right? Yeah, these 3 are not integers, right? So possibly not, right? So that one is the EDF on 2. So remember, there was 2 global multiprocessor techniques we looked at. There was an RMS global and an EDF global. This is the EDF global. The RMS global is the one that just looks at 0.41 times the number of processors, and it checks the overall utilization against that, right? Okay? So that's it. That's everything I believe that's the last question, right? Oh no, how many possible ways can 5 non-periodic tests be scheduled? Just 5 factorial, we covered that. Which statement is true? RMS requires dynamic priority. Is that true? No, RMS has static priority. It's basically just the priority is determined by the period, right? The lowest period has the highest priority, right? RMS requires static priority. That's true. EDF and RMS require static priority. No. EDF requires static priority. No. So EDF is dynamic priority. Earliest deadline first requires that you figure out what the earliest deadline is. And that's going to change every time a task becomes ready or finishes, right? So you got to recalculate priorities every time a new task comes online and ready to go. Its period begins, or another task finishes execution. That's very expensive. RMS, on the other hand, just uses static priority. Whoever has the lowest period has the highest priority. Now, that doesn't mean it's still preemptive. So if a new task with RMS scheduling comes online, in other words, its period starts, it becomes ready, it goes from sleeping to ready, you still have to preempt. But when you preempt, the decision for preemption is just based on the static priority, which is the period. Okay? All right, so I think that's, oh no, I still got some more. Which statement is true? Any task having a utilization meets the FBL, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this one's not true. Any task that can be scheduled on 2 processors can be scheduled on 1 processor. No, I don't think that's true. Any task that can be scheduled with EDF can be scheduled with RMS. No. Any task that can be scheduled with RMS can be scheduled with EDF. That one's definitely true, right? So that would be D. So in other words, RMS is a less powerful scheduling technique, but it's much more practical to use, right? EDF works really well as long as you don't overcommit, oversubscribe, right? At least on one processor. On multi-processor, then EDF kind of craps the bed. Okay, any questions? Yes?
On Blackboard, it says the lab is due on Monday. Not today.
Oh, Monday. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. I changed that. I changed that last week. Someone asked me if we could extend it to Monday. The late penalty starts after Monday. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry. I forgot that we made that change. Yep. I just made that change. That was an update. I even changed the syllabus to reflect that. Yes?
Will we be able to demo on Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. All right, sounds good. Thank you, guys.